Now we will take a look at using thinking maps as a tool to get students to extend their thinking as they think like a disciplinarian. Another great strategy to focus student thinking when reading a narrative is to think like a psychologist. Psychologists look at what motivates people to behave the way they do. To think like a psychologist, students would look at what motivates characters to behave the way they do. The example here is from the 4th grade open court reading text, Mrs. Frisbee and the Crow. In this story, Mrs. Frisbee walks through Farmer Fitzgibbon's farmyard between the barn and the chicken house. For those of you who are not familiar with this story, it is a dangerous way for her to walk. This would be an engaging way to do a second or third read of the text, focusing on what motivated Mrs. Frisbee to take that route. Students would find evidence to support their claim as they filled out the one-sided multi-flow map. Here is another example with a 3rd grade story, 2 Days in May. The students will reread the text from the perspective of an environmental scientist. The prompt is, what might have caused the deer to arrive in the city garden? Or in other words, what environmental changes might cause animals to seek a different habitat? With a partner or collaborative group, students will go back to the text citing evidence that answers the prompt. A sequencing flow map lends itself nicely to focus on the steps or process a disciplinarian might use. Here we have the steps that an engineer might take as he or she works to solve a problem. Notice the use of the word prototype. That is a Tier 3 word which is highly specialized and content specific with a low occurrence in text. Eventually, after your students have had multiple opportunities to think like a disciplinarian and you have practiced using the disciplinarian word wall, your students will get to the point where they can analyze a text from a perspective of their choosing. The open court story, Arctic Explorer, the story of Matthew Henson from the 4th grade survival unit, could be read from a variety of perspectives. Some examples would be an anthropologist, marine biologist, geographer, and historian. Students could make their own frame, choosing the thinking tools that would fit their information from the perspective of their discipline.